Buongiorno ragazzi, oggi parliamo degli aggettivi. So today we're going to talk about adjectives, but before doing so, I'd like to start with a proverb as we've typically done. Il proverbio per oggi è quando il gatto non c'è, I topi ballano, meaning when the cat's away, the mice will dance, rather than the mice will play, as we say in English. Okay, so let's start talking about aggettivi. Adjectivi. In general, a few things you need to know. First of all, adjectives usually follow the noun. This is opposite of what we do in English, where the adjectives typically precede the noun. Also, adjectives agree in number and gender with the nouns that they're modifying. Also, adjectives describe people, places, and things, as in English. And another thing that we ought to know is that the masculine form is dominant. So if we have a mixed group, meaning men and women in the group, we use the masculine adjective to describe the group. Finally, it's important to mention that there are three groups of adjectives in Italian. And when I say there are three groups, I mean that there are three ways that masculine nouns can end in the singular. And one way is that it ends in an O. Another way is it ends in an E. And the final way is that it can end in ista. And we're going to take a look at these, each one individually. Okay, so we're going to start with adjectives that end in O. And if an adjective naturally ends in O, such as the word bello, then there are four things that it can do. It can have that masculine singular ending being bello. It could have the feminine singular being bella. It could have the feminine plural being belle, and it can have the masculine plural being belli. So let's take a look at our examples. We have il ragazzo pigro, the lazy boy. Then we have la studentessa bella, the beautiful female student. Then we have gli studenti bravi, the good students, mixed group, or it could be a group of male students. Okay, so it could be men and women or just male students. And our last example is le professoresse noiose, the boring female professors. Noiose by the e on the ending of noiose, and the fact that we have the word professoresse, we know we're speaking about a feminine group. Ok, andiamo al prossimo slide. Second, we have group 2, which are adjectives that end in an E. An example we have is elegante, elegante. And if an adjective ends in E, meaning that the masculine singular form ends in an E, as the word elegante, or the word gentile, or the word intelligente, it can do two things. In the singular, it can remain E for both masculine and feminine. And in the plural, it becomes an I for both masculine and feminine. Okay, so we have a singular ending and a plural ending. Going through our examples, la donna elegante, the elegant lady or woman. Uomo elegante, the elegant man. And notice once again how these share the ending with an E on it. I miei fratelli eleganti, my elegant brothers, and le mie sorelle eleganti. And once again, notice that the plural form, eleganti, shares that I on the end for both the masculine plural and the feminine plural. Va bene, let's go on to our third group. And these are adjectives that end in ista. So the masculine singular form ends in ista. Some examples, we have la donna altruista, the altruistic woman, and l'uomo pessimista, the pessimistic man. So notice that both the masculine and the feminine singulars share the same ending. They're going to share the ista ending. So ista is not a feminine ending. It is a both masculine and feminine ending for adjectives in the singular. However, when we go on, we're going to see that we do have a masculine plural form and a feminine plural form. I miei fratelli ottimisti, my optimistic brothers, and le mie sorelle ottimiste, my optimistic sisters. So notice again, we have a masculine ends in an I and a feminine ending in an E for the plural forms. Okay, well, also we have the same issue with adjectives that might end in a ka, a ga, or a go. Because what's going to happen is when we make that adjective plural using an e or an I, that sound shifts from that hard sound, the ga sound, to a g or a j sound, and the ka or the ko sound to a chi or a che. So to solve that problem, we put in an aka, as we've also done with our nouns. So let's take a look. We have the adjective lungo, long, going to lunghi. And we have the aka to achieve that goal of preserving the hard sound. Simpatica goes to simpatiche, the aka solving that problem and making it a hard sound. And largo, large, going to larghi with the aka keeping that sound. Adjectives agree with the nouns in number and gender in general. So an example of this would be Gianni e Marco mangiano panini grandi. Gianni and Marco eat big sandwiches. Okay. Va bene, andiamo al prossimo. Some adjectives also can precede the nouns. I did say that adjectives typically follow the noun, but some can precede, and sometimes will actually precede a noun just for emphasis. But here are a few that precede just in general and not necessarily for emphasis. We have bravo, bello, brutto, buono, caro, cattivo, giovane, grande, nuovo, piccolo, vecchio, vero, and lungo. Colors, I colori. Colors are also adjectives, and they will fall in either group 1 or group 2. So let's take a look at them. We have verde, giallo, bianco, azzurro, grigio, marrone, nero, rosso, beige, rosa, arancione, blue, and viola. And notice that beige, rosa, arancione, blue, and viola, these ones don't change their endings at all. They stay fixed regardless of whether they modify a masculine, feminine, singular, or plural noun. Okay, let's talk about aggettivi possessivi. Aggettivi possessivi. Possessive adjectives are also adjectives, but they happen to express a relationship between a person and an object. So they behave just like adjectives in group 1. Possessive adjectives are special though, because the first part of the adjective agrees with the person that possesses the thing. The second part agrees with the possession itself. So really these adjectives agree in 2 different ways. So they require special attention when you study them. First person, in the singular, we have me. So if I am the possessor, the part agrees with the am I is for me. All right. In the second person singular, we have tu, or su for the formal, tu for the informal, su for the formal. Su also for the third person, feminine or masculine. Then we have the plural. We have nost for the first person plural. For the second person plural, we have vost. For the second person plural in the formal, which is very rarely used, we have loro. And in the third person plural, we also have loro. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. And let's take a look at examples of how the first task of the possessive adjective does agree with the person who possesses, or the thing that possesses something. So the first part, we can see the example. Io ho una penna. I have a pen. È la mia penna. So even though I'm a man, the me is the portion of that word for me. The a on the end agrees with penna. So whenever you're doing an agreement, divided up into 2 parts. That first part agrees with the possessor. The second part agrees with the object. Next, let's look at Anna ha un fratello e una sorella. Anna has a brother and a sister. Carlo è suo fratello. Claudia è sua sorella. So we see the su agrees with Anna. So that first part of the word is for her. The o on the end agrees with that object, or in this case, the person that she possesses. So the suo for fratello and sua for sorella, sister. Okay, going forward, we see the endings for these adjectivi possessivi. And like I said, they are in group 1, so we have 4 endings. We have an adjective, we have o, a, I, and a. O for the masculine singular, A for the feminine singular, E for the masculine plural, and A for the feminine plural. So in English it would be an O, an A, an I, and an E. Also, to point out about the possessive additives, that possessive additives almost always take the definite articles. We will cover out some exceptions for this, but in general, when you're talking about possessing something, use that definite article unless it is one of the exceptions. Okay, the endings agree in number and gender with the possession. So if it's a masculine thing that I possess, it's an O. If it's a feminine thing I possess, it ends in an A. If it's two masculine things, it ends in an I, and two feminine things, it will end in an E. One exception for that possessive additive is loro. Loro is an exception, and it will never change. Another thing we need to be aware of is that the masculine ending for me, for the word mi, is mie, M-I-E-I, not M-I-I. So we're not going to have double I's there. Mie. Mie is a masculine ending. The example of this would be I mie nipoti. And notice M-I-E-I in front of nipoti instead of M-I-I. Also in the masculine plural, we have exceptions to the tu form and the su form. So tu does not become tu-i, T-U-I, but it becomes tuoi, T-U-O-I. And the su form, it is the same thing. It doesn't become sui, S-U-I, but it becomes suoi, S-U-O-I. An example here would be I suoi cognati and I tuoi suoceri. I suoi cognati would be your daughter, your in-laws, and I tuoi suoceri would also be your in-laws for the mother-in-law and father-in-law. Cognati would be your brother-in-law, sister-in-law. Ok, andiamo al prossimo slide. Okay, so let's talk about a couple special cases with using articles and adjectives. As I mentioned, in general, you want to give everything an article in Italian when we're using possessive adjectives. However, if we're dealing with parenti, and take a special note that parenti does not mean parents. Parenti means relatives. Well, a possessive adjective refers to a relative that is in the singular and not modified by any kind of adjective or a suffix after that relative does not take an article. So this would be singular, unmodified nouns. Loro, however, is an exception. Loro takes an article every time. Loro also, as you may remember, ends in an O, and it ends in an O for masculine singular, feminine singular, masculine plural, and feminine plural. So loro is an exception the whole way around. Let's look at a couple examples. Nostro figlio abita in Italia. Our son lives in Italy. Our son is not modified by any kind of adjective. We're not saying our tall son or intelligent son. No, just our son. Thus, it does not take an article. Mia madre è professoressa. My mother is a professor. I'm not modifying mother by any sort of noun. I'm not saying my nice mother or my interesting mother, just my mother. Thus, it does not take an article. Insegna tedesco tuo padre. Does your father teach German? Once again, tuo padre, it's a singular noun. Your father, it's a singular family member. Thus, it does not take an article. He's not modified by anything. La loro madre cucina bene. Ah, here, yes. Because loro always takes an article. Loro is an exception. Doesn't matter whether it's a singular relative or not, loro will take that article. Plural nouns, as we mentioned, are not in this category because plural nouns, not being singular, it doesn't matter whether they're modified or not, they always take an article. Also, mamma, papa, and babbo are, in a sense, modified versions of the word mamma. Modified versions of the word madre, mother, padre, father. So, because these are, in a sense, terms of endearment, they do take an article. You can think of them just as modified versions of those original nouns. Looking at these examples now, we see I vostri fratelli abitano in Italia. You all's brothers, live in Italy. Because it is a plural thing, we're talking about more than one brother, we do use that article. Next, la mia mamma cucina bene. My mother cooks well. Yes, mother, singular family member, but we're using mamma. It's a term of endearment. It's more like saying mommy. Thus, we're using the article here as well. Il mio babbo si riposa dopo cena. My dad rests after dinner. Well, yes, it does mean dad. It is a singular family member, but babbo is a special term, a term of endearment. Thus, we are using an article. Finally, il nostro papà indossa una giacca blu. Our dad wears a blue jacket. And in this case, we are using the article because papa, once again, a term of endearment. It's a modified version of dad. So let's take a look at this slide as well. Possessive adjectives use articles when they refer to family members that are modified by some sort of adjective, and also if they're the word's modified by a suffix. So let's take a look at these. La mia cara sorella, my dear sister. Because it's I'm using the word dear to describe my sister in this sentence, or in this phrase rather, I'm using the article la. However, if I simply say my sister, mia sorella. Next, il mio vecchio zio, my old uncle. Because I'm saying my old uncle, and I am modifying the word uncle with an adjective, I use the word il. But it would just be mio zio if I'm not using the il. I mean, if I'm not using vecchio, I'm not using any kind of adjective to modify that word. La sua cuginetta. This means her little cousin. Well, cuginetta is an example of a noun using a suffix. The word typically is cugina or cugino, cousin, but the eta means little. So because I'm modifying this word with a suffix to provide some kind of description further about the cousin, we're using the article la. But if I just say his or her cousin, it would be sua cugina, without the article. La nostra sorellina. Once again, this is modified by a suffix. Sorella is sister, but sorellina, little sister. Thus, we're using the article. However, if I'm just saying our sister, it would be nostra sorella. Then we have la vostra buona madre, you all's or y'all's good mother. Well, in this case, because mother is a singular, it is a singular family member, I'm using the article la because I'm calling her a good mother. I'm using an adjective to describe her. However, vostra madre, without that word modifying mother, I don't use that. I don't use the article. So just vostra madre, your all's mother. And that's it for the day. Ci vediamo alla prossima.